have you had your eye on this book?
How you get so big getting food of this kind?
Hello and welcome! Today we are reviewing Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. Charles Soule has written for Star Wars before, mostly in the comic sphere, and this debut story in the High Republic is also his debut novel for the franchise. This review will be mostly spoiler-free, but keep in mind I am going to touch on a couple of structural things, a few characters, just so that I'm actually able to discuss the novel, but I promise not to spill any giant beans for you. If I had to describe this novel in one word, it would be wow. If you've been following it all, you may have seen glowing reviews online up until this point, and I gotta be honest with you, none of them are exaggerated. This is easily one of the top novels I've ever read for Star Wars, both Legends and current canon. I really can't say enough good things about it. It was funny, it was scary, it was heartfelt, it was heart-wrenching, it gave you what you wanted when you needed it, and it crushed you when the story needed it. It was a constant roller coaster of emotion. Part of what makes this novel so unique is we've never really seen the Jedi quite like this. They're not just stoic figures, they're not just mortal and vulnerable, and they're not just infinite super beings. They're somehow all three of those at the same time. We get to see these Jedi do amazing impossible feats, the likes of which we don't even see on the screen sometimes, but we do it while also realizing that these Jedi can very much be beatable beings. This book does so much all at once. It's somehow grander and bigger than some of the events we've seen in the films, while also not taking away from anything that we have seen before in Star Wars. It left me to wonder just how do we get from the Jedi we see in this story to the ones we see in the prequel-era trilogy. I found myself soaking in this golden age while also worrying what about it must be gilded for things to go how they eventually go. Soule is already a well-regarded Star Wars author, so it's no surprise that he delivers here, and while the novel is absolutely a result of his talent and hard work, there's something just really special about it, and I can only imagine that added ingredient is the collaborative nature of the High Republic. That this is a story well crafted by one author and ultimately written by one author, comes from an overall project of 5 total authors as well as an intense story group and supervisory group that really just wanted to create this new space. And it's not just that the people involved are talented, it's that the people involved all seem to get along with each other. Anytime you watch any kind of event with the minds behind the High Republic, they're all having a great time together. You can tell they had fun working on this. Not that, other authors don't have fun writing Star Wars, but that this community around writing these books brings out a vibrancy that I've seen both in this novel and the other High Republic materials that I've read thus far. Nothing in this novel is unfocused, is useless, is there just for the sake of being there. Everything has a purpose without the book also feeling like work to read it. It was just a good adventure. It was fun to read, while also leaving no resource unspent. And Light of the Jedi serves as the perfect launching point for the era. While Star Wars book fans may be aware of what came before, both in Legends and canon, this book had to somehow establish itself as being different than what we've seen before, while also carving out a new space by just being what it is. It had to be an entry point both for somebody who has never read a Star Wars novel, or specifically a pre-movie Star Wars story of any kind, while also being something that could reorient longtime fans that are very familiar with what comes before the films. And the novel does this with a frontier spirit. It's not just rewriting something or changing established lore for the sake of changing it or adding new characters for the sake of it being different. It's really just it's a story that is unfolding and revealing itself. There's new layers every chapter. They're just letting it kind of be and bloom rather than trying to write this with a specific purpose in terms of how it relates to the grand history of Star Wars out of universe. Even the structure and pacing of the book is a little bit different than other Star Wars novels I've read. Any other Star Wars novel could have put the Great Disaster, which is the cornerstone of the novel, in either just the very first chapter or be what the novel slowly builds up to until the end. It would either be the quick, we're going to throw you in the middle of it all, and then the rest of the book is dealing with it, or it was going to be a merciless slog to the end to find out what actually happens. Instead, and this is where, like I said, I'm going to touch on things that aren't really spoilery, but are going to address the story, you effectively get a third act as your first act. Everything that you're reading is, yes, the inciting incident, but the tension of what that incident is. It's a short moment of time spread out over several chapters as you really just are thrown into what could be one of the most catastrophic events the galaxy has ever seen, and leaving you to discover, is it just going to be kind of a catastrophe or a gigantic catastrophe, and just what the fallout's going to be. Then it throws you into the second act, and the second act almost felt like a normal first. It really, if any part of the novel felt slow, it was that transition out of the first into the second. And that's only because of how intense the first act was. That you go from really what culminates in one of the most emotional moments I've experienced as a Star Wars fan to, and here we go. Now we're putting you in the galaxy and showing it to you. But I think it does it in a really effective way, even to the point where it feels slower. Like I said, it's more in comparison. It's not that the novel itself is slow. You just go from this really drawn out moment that's spread over pages in time to, okay, now time is normal again. And I don't mean that literally. I don't mean like there's no time travel involved in the story, but it's just the way the story is written and how it expands time or how it makes time feel. There's a distinct difference between the two parts. And then at the end, you have another third act that goes to another intense series of moments. Only in the beginning, where you don't really know any of the characters, you're so focused on the plot and what's going to happen in the intensity of it. And then by the end, it may not be as intense as what was happening at the beginning of the book, but now you care about the characters and what happens to them, and you've had time to form a relationship with them, and they're who you're worried about. So you have this kind of story-heavy, emotional insanity at the beginning, and then at the end you have this character-heavy, emotional insanity. And then in the middle is just some really excellent world building. Part of what made the novel feel fresh was not just the great story and not just the great characters, but that the novel didn't even function and flow like a normal Star Wars novel. If I were to sum up everything I just said in like one sentence, I would basically say that the book is a lore-building sandwich between two slices of intense anxiety. As for the characters, to me, Avar Kriss is the obvious show stealer. She is somehow the biggest and bestest in town without being aloof and irritating. The novel truly doesn't have a single main character, but she might be the most central one to the various conflicts. In what could have easily been the blank slate main character type who's the hero because he or she is just so awesome that obviously she's the hero, we instead get somebody who's just likable. You just enjoy reading her. And besides her, there are these two Padawans, Burry and Bell, who just have these incredible heartfelt moments that are central to just what the difference is between High Republic Jedi and what the movie era Jedi are. Even though there's these incredible feats of strength for the Jedi in this, there's also these really intimate moments where you get to see the emotion of what it is to be a Jedi. And there's dozens of other characters to love, and if you read it, you might have a completely different set of standout characters, but those were the three that stood out and resonated the most with me. And for the villains, the Nile really succeeded in being new and terrifying in a very crowded rogues gallery of epic Star Wars villains. Just when you think you understand them, you realize you don't, and then later you realize that you still don't, and then even later, once you think you got it all figured out, you realize you still know nothing at all. They're going to be the stuff of nightmares for our heroes, and I'm very excited to see how that plays out over the rest of the story. So those are my big thoughts, without getting too spoilery, on Light of the Jedi. If you're looking to start into the High Republic, Light of the Jedi is the most obvious place to start. It's the story that reveals the least about other stories before you read them, where the other material that's already out technically happened either concurrently or after this novel. It's also good to note that currently in Star Wars Insider, they're releasing a series of like prequel short stories. So there's a story from Star Wars Insider 199 that talks about some characters and shows characters from the book before they get to the novel. You don't have to read it at all, but if you are somebody who's looking to be a completionist or fully chronological about this sort of thing, you might want to check out that short story, also by Charles Soule. That's all I have to say today. Please leave me a comment letting me know what you thought of the novel. If you're not already, follow us on the socials, and until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun!